I am very excited to welcome Bob Pragada, who's the President and Chief Operating Officer of Jacobs Engineering. And Dr. Martin Fisher is going to be introducing him.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, for the already really, for me, stimulating, thought-provoking symposium. And it's a great pleasure for me to sit next to Bob Pragada, graduate of our program. So it's great to catch up a little bit already. And Bob has had a really amazingly illustrious career in public service in the Navy and then in private industry, leading quite a range of endeavors related to improving the built environment. And currently, Bob serves as the President and Chief Operating Officer of Jacobs. And so I don't want to take more time from Bob. I'll turn it over to Bob for a few remarks and then a discussion on this, as we all know, really critical topic.
All right, well, Dr. Fisher, thank you. I have to say Dr. Fisher because several years ago, I won't say how long ago, I think Martin and I both had hair that maybe was a different color than what it is today. But it's great to be back at Stanford, and it's great to speak to all of you. I want to talk a little on a topic that is a great passion of mine and a great passion of our companies. And I think that'll make a little sense here in a moment. But maybe just to put in context with regards to Jacobs, some of you might have heard of Jacobs. We are a Fortune 200 company here in the US, but global company, 55,000 employees around the world, deep domain expertise in engineering, as well as in the infrastructure and advanced facilities market for several decades. So you might have heard of Jacobs as Jacobs Engineering, but over time, as you'll see here in a couple slides, that's evolved. So I want to talk a little bit about Jacobs, who we are, why this topic is so critically important to us, and then maybe put it in context of kind of the larger world and what's happening, at least from our lens, and some of the things that we're doing, and then want to hear from all of you too. So why don't I just dive in?
So is the screen showing?
Yeah, looks good.
Yes,
Thanks,
yes.
Right. So just touch here.
Yeah.
Okay, great. You know, when we talk about our company, all of the statistical stuff, you can go on the internet and find all of that. Actually, you can find this as well. But we really think that it's important to talk about our culture. You know, over the years, we had a strategy dating back to when Dr. Jacobs founded the company in the 40s of, you know, we have great skill sets with engineering horsepower. And our strategy was really, we do work for clients, and we're in the business of making our clients' business better. And we do that through their deployment of capital in capital projects. And that worked. And the company grew both organically and non-organically all the way through to current day. But we found ourselves, you know, kind of at an inflection point in the 2015, 2016 timeframe where, you know, doing good work for clients and making our clients' business a better business meant something different. And when we step back and we look at the advances that we had made and thinking about our culture and what's really important to us, it kind of came off the screen to us. And the effect that we were not only having for our clients' business, but what our clients were doing in the world. So by de facto, what we were doing in the world. And that was, you know, making the world a more connected and sustainable way. And we did that through our intellectual horsepower and through engineering skill sets. But it was more than the old days where client had an issue, put some form of a concept of a solution to the issue, and then came to an engineering company to design it. We now found our place in the client's value proposition to where we were working with our clients to solve critical issues because they didn't know what the answer was. And now, you know, with the effects of everything the world is going through, you know, we needed to be a part of that. And it really defined our purpose-driven culture to create a more connected and sustainable world. Part of that is who we are. And you can see the values that are on the screen there. But I think the piece that we, you know, it was a huge awakening for all of us is that who are our clients? It's the world. What do we need to look like? We need to look like the way the world looks like. And when we looked at ourselves, we didn't. And so we live inclusion, and we say inclusion and diversity because we feel like we can't be a diverse company until we're most inclusive. And it's been a big piece of what we've been driving all the way from the board level to our executive leadership team, and now throughout the entire organization. And when I say, do I just hit this? When I say the entire organization, I do mean the organization. You know, it starts from the top. You know, that board diversity that we have today is much greater, both from a gender and a color standpoint. Almost 40% of our board, 10 outside directors are diverse, gender diverse, as well as people of color. At the management team level, it's 50-50 now, gender diversity, and 70% from a color diversity as well. But really, it needs to be the entirety of the organization, that being an example. And so, you know, this is who we are as Jacobs today. And I'll tell you, in what the world has gone through in the last 2.5 years with the global pandemic and what's come out of that, and I'll talk about it here in a second, it doesn't look like life has become any easier with each day. However, the pandemic brought us together. 6 days after it hit, you know, we went into a remote environment. And as a company, we actually became a better company and figured out ways to connect our global talent in ways that we never knew before in order to deliver solutions for our clients locally, and doing that in a sustainable way. And you know, what comes off the page for me on this slide is, you know, this concept of we love our families. And if we feel like our work families are our families, we love our work family as well. And that's really, really been magnified during the pandemic. So talking a little bit about what climate response and what the whole ESG world means to us. You know, we just embarked upon, it's now our third since that 2016 inflection point. We do 3-year strategies on our new strategy. And you see the end markets that we operate in there below. And we're a market leader from an engineering perspective and technical services perspective in each one of those end markets. But then when you step back and you say, well, what are the major global disruptors that are affecting the world, the planet? And you know, we got a mix of accelerators that are kind of skill sets, as well as what are those disruptors. And I'll start with the left. Climate response, it's a generational situation that's facing the world. And I think that's almost cliche to say today. But at the same time, it was our biggest opportunity to have a positive effect and a positive influence on the world because of what we do. Whether it be in transportation or water or environmental or in life sciences, you know, the work that we were doing, we were already on the forefront of it. So to now say, well, how do we affect our clients who are now having to deal with everything that is in the, you know, in the sustainable environment, you know, was a natural fit. It's a big area of focus for us, and it's driving our entire company. I'll talk about that in a second. And then data solutions on the far right. You know, the world of the acceleration of the digitization of everything. How do we now take what we do using data, not only as an enabler for a better solution, but also as the solution itself in the engineered environment? And then, you know, as we move up that consultancy chain, we will always be great engineers, but doing that from a consultative and advisory and being a true advocate for our client's business and the world is a big piece of our move forward strategy. So exciting times ahead, and we're right in the middle of everything, knowing that our biggest catalyst for this is going to be our people and having an environment where all of us can bring our authentic self to work, regardless of your gender, your color, who you love, where you're from. We want all of those people at our company because that's the brightest brains, and that's how we become a better company. So specifically in the world of ESG, you know, this is a snapshot of where we are today. We do about $12 billion of revenue as a company. If you parcel out, you know, according to the ESG rating platforms that exist in today's, mostly in the EU and in North America, 6 billion of it is centered, according to the current rating agencies, in the world of ESG. And that number, if you were to kind of, and those rating agencies are changing their criteria nearly monthly. So I have some examples there, whether it be around new forms of energy, sustainable buildings, sustainable asset management, you know, new ways of delivering the electrification of everything. You know, we are in the middle of advising, consulting, concepting, as well as engineering those facilities. And we made a bold statement to the market here, our shareholders and our investors, as well as all of our people, that by 2025, 100% of our project portfolio will be ESG centric. And we're not intimidated by that effort and that bold statement at all. So that was it. So maybe I just come off the screen. Actually, this could be I don't know if they could see me. Can you see me?
Oh, we can. Do you want
You can see you, yeah.
Oh, you can. Oh, okay.
Should we stop the share?
Yeah, you
and
can
then
start the
just-
share.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe just to step back a moment. So that was kind of my infomercial on Jacobs, but what this topic means for our company as just an ambassador for everything that is in the decarbonized world, as well as centered around ESG, and go to a little bit of stage setting on the world. So now transcending above Jacobs' lens and Jacobs' view. And these are some real statistics that I thought was important to put it in framework. And I think it's, all of you have probably already through the Learning Accelerator gone through some of these, but for decades, the world's environmental and social injustice crisis, it is worsening. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. And the deforestation, the habitat destruction at scale, especially in a place like here in California, as well as all over the world, is unimaginable. While this is happening, the geopolitical landscape continues to drive, massive instability and disruption, which then makes all of our jobs as engineers and as scientists and as technicians, even much more important. And, while we think that we're getting out ahead of the curve, especially over the course of the last 2.5 years, things like inflation and recession and other things that we hear in the media continue to maybe have a bit of a mental health effect on us as well. But I'd offer that with all of this doom and gloom on the surface that it appears like, we've got an extraordinary opportunity to really change, the global community and demonstrate as a collective, the positive effect that we have. And maybe some statistics on things that have already happened from a positive standpoint over the course of the last 10 years. A couple of statistics, the percentage of people living below the poverty line has actually declined by approximately 3%. Doesn't seem like a lot, but that's 230 million people globally. The completion rate for upper secondary education for women and girls has increased nearly 8% over that same period of time. Percentage of people with access to safely managed water has increased over 8% as well. And marine areas that have protected marine areas has grown 2.5 times over the course of the last 10 years. And numbers of companies, publicly traded, private companies, but companies around the world publishing sustainability reports and data is doubled in the last 10 years. So, it is the backdrop of humanity coming together in order to solve and really have a positive effect on what we're talking about. So maybe if I shift over a little bit to sustainable buildings and what does that mean? And, the world is undergoing, and I'm sure you've covered a lot of this already, but the largest wave of urban growth that we've ever seen in human history. This statistic always gets me that over half the global population today is living in a major metropolitan area. And by 2060, 2/3 of what the world's 10 billion people are expected to live in a city, which is just putting tremendous pressure on, the built environment today, but even more tomorrow. We need to build over 230 million square meters of new floor areas just to accommodate this growth. And, just to put in perspective, that is the equivalent of building the surface area of a city as the size of Paris each week over the next 40 years, which is pretty huge. While this is happening, buildings account for approximately today 35% of the global energy use and 38% and produce 38% of global emissions. So it's a real opportunity for where we can go on stopping this trend that's out there. And the bottom line is that if we can stop this trend, we can have a significant positive impact on all that's happening in climate response. So some more good news on what's happening. According to Engineering News Record, the demand for green buildings has grown 10 to 15% compounded every year for the last 10 years. And many corporations are looking for enterprise-wide type of solutions around this. While this is going on, and I think this was most evident to all of us over the course of the last 2 years, advancing social justice and equity in our cities and places is a primary criteria as we're looking at the sustainable buildings in addressing, this urban growth that's going on. So it's a big issue. And companies are signing up, as well as cities. May of 2020, 28 major cities signed into the World Green Building Council for net zero carbon buildings commitment. And they're asking for net zero carbon emission by 2030. And across the private sector, and these are private sector companies like Jacobs and several others, 2,000 of one-fifth of the 2,000 largest companies, publicly traded companies in the world, have signed up for these same commitments, to include Jacobs. Think about this: that 20% of the 2,000 represent companies that produce $14 trillion in revenue. So this is a big issue. Private companies are coming on board, and all of these targets are just a real first step. So, I think that all of you, as far as rising to the challenge, know better than ever, that I'm articulating now, or that I ever will. Just what a big opportunity this is for all of us. But we absolutely need to act fast. If you look at the value of this from a private sector standpoint, green buildings are actually generating, a higher investment as well as a higher valuation than any other buildings around the world. Cities like Sydney and Melbourne and New York City and London, these are increases that are anywhere from 10 to 15% of higher value in the building itself when it's done in a sustainable way. But again, I'm going to come back to something I said before. The space, and Dr. Fisher and I were just talking about this, the space of our buildings now in the last 2 years has even changed because of the purpose. Before, people would come into their office, maybe it had a wall on it, maybe it didn't, work for 8, 9, 10, maybe 15 hours if you're in certain sectors, and move off. Now you can do all of that in the comforts of your own home. So how do we continue to build that environment of inclusion and creative thought leadership in a workspace, a sustainable way? And what we've said at Jacobs is we've got to change the purpose of the building and make the office space, the residential community, the retail space, whatever it is, more inclusive, and so go beyond just the decarbonization element, but also think about the purpose of collaboration, culture building, and bringing great ideas to the forefront. So maybe I'll finish here with a couple of things that we're doing with our clients on all the things that we just talked about. And a couple of these organizations will be familiar to you, but I'm kind of toggling between decarbonization of buildings and some of the things that we're helping our clients with creating sustainable futures for all of us. But on the sustainable future piece, the pandemic taught us a lot about what we can do as a global society on driving world human-saving vaccines in record time, from inception to production to distribution in record time. And so we're all in the middle of this, but we're now taking those concepts to now life-saving therapies as well as other treatments with companies like Eli Lilly and Merck and Pfizer in creating the next generation of facilities in order to facilitate that what we've learned over the last 2 years even further. Another big item that's going on right now is the supply chain crisis we find ourselves in, and the sustainability of just the global supply chains. And number one on that list is semiconductor chip manufacturing. And we're in the middle right now with a company that's headquartered not too far away from here, a company called Intel. I'm allowed to publicly say that, in what is the biggest capital deployment renaissance that the Western world has ever seen. This is more than $200 billion of capital being deployed in record speed to create manufacturing space, to change the dynamic of, or balance the dynamic of 20% of the chip manufacturing capacity being manufactured in the Western world, and 80% in Taiwan and in the Eastern world, back to more of a balance. By the way, that was 80%, 20% in the Eastern world just 30 years ago. And so that's a big deal when we think about, the sustainability of where we go. And then from a buildings perspective, some of the things that we're specifically doing in the built environment, use a couple of examples. The Carnegie West Center in Boston, just some statistics that kind of just crystallizes that it can be done. We did a design that ensured that 88% of portable water use was used reducing or by capturing rainwater, 47% energy use reduction by cost, and 21% of site renewable energy generation. And probably most importantly, because this kind of goes to the mental health aspect, 92% of daylighting was regularly used by occupied areas without light. We've done tons of net zero building designs and design reviews for, and we had to get in one Bay Area analysis here, our analogy here, for the Sunnyvale Civic Center, buildings in Orlando, in Scotland, and you think about a place like India, even in India. And we're doing it for our own buildings. If you were to go, and I hope some of you have the opportunity to do so, to our office in London or in Boston, complete LEED certified and ratings that are top notch. So I'll leave you with this. What's the ask that I'd leave not just the students, but even all of our professors as well, is a couple of things. When you take away from this accelerator, or when you depart university as a student, walk out the doors taking everything that you've learned in school, but more so the sustainability aspects from an awareness standpoint, and put it to use. Dr. Fisher and I were just talking. I don't know if I actually, no offense, Dr. Fisher, I don't know if I actually learned much when I was here at Stanford, but I certainly became aware of a lot of different aspects of the world that I was going into. And so that horizontal learning of going into the professional environment and saying, no, I've seen that, and then that generating solutions was a big piece. The second one, courage. We especially as engineers, we tend to want to be right, and our courage only steps out when we're absolutely sure that we're right. And when we talk about things like sustainability, it's having the courage to speak up and to really acknowledge what we don't know, and continue to have that thirst for learning as well as applying. And the last is do the right thing. The world is clearly at a precipice, at an inflection point here, and we've got a great opportunity to have a positive impact in the future of our planet. And it's an exciting time for all. So with that, maybe I'll stop short and hope there's some good questions on the front. But thank you again for the great opportunity to speak. I could probably go on for another a couple of hours on the topic, but the thought it might be good to hear from all of you.
Great. Martin, do you want to ask a few questions? And if you do have questions, please write it into the Q&A window.
I think you have the questions more handy than I do.
Okay. All right. Well,
the screen sorry, Peter.
I'd like it to be a little bit of a discussion here for a few minutes. I think we can do that. So Bob, I'm really interested and excited in what you're saying about where Jacobs is going. That's encouraging, and it really does feed into this thing that there's going to be and are a lot of jobs as it relates to decarbonization and specifically in our area of building decarbonization. Let me ask you a quick question. You did talk about buildings a lot, and I was really amazed by that statistic of one Paris every month. You have a hard time duplicating the beauty of Paris, but anyway, maybe we'll get it right by 2060, but at least we'll decarbonize it. But what about the opportunity for Jacobs in building renewable energy facilities? Are you guys involved with that?
We are. We are, and it's, if there's so much when you throw out things like climate response. I would say what's gravitating to the top of that list right now is energy transition. And now, sadly and unfortunately, as a result of the conflict that the whole world is feeling the effects of from the Ukraine, energy security. And so renewable sources, alternative sources of energy, whether it be offshore wind or even even solar or other means and methods, is risen to the top, and specifically in Europe has accelerated to a speed that we never knew. And Peter, probably the best way to crystallize that is a program that we're working on right now in Germany. As it's been well publicized in the media, the effects that the conflict has had on Germany. We were working on what's called an interconnector. So it's, Germany is structured to where in the north there are tremendous amounts of renewable sources of energy, coming off of offshore wind as well as solar. The program started 3 years ago is to put an interconnector down the central spine, 900 kilometers of transmission cable down the center spine of Germany to bring renewable sources of energy to the south. Same thing is happening in Tasmania, off of the coast of New South Wales, in Australia, and a few other areas too. In Germany, that has now accelerated, and even to the point where some of the nuclear plants that were being decommissioned, we've slowed down because the source of LNG and other hydrocarbon-based sources has quickly stopped. So I think it's just a couple of examples that we looked at it first from the perspective of the planet, energy transition, more renewable sources, to now energy security on what these types of disruptions could happen overnight. And so it's a big topic, and one that a lot of emphasis being placed.
Yeah. Well, I imagine there's just a big, business opportunity there. From what we understand, the statistics are saying that last year, 81% of all new electricity generation that was built was renewable energy in the US. So that's primarily wind and solar, and then some geothermal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you a tough question here, if I might. Jacobs is seeing sort of the writing on the wall around decarbonization and this transition. How does it make you guys feel when you're asked to work on natural gas pipelines or natural gas infrastructure or other fossil fuel infrastructure?
Yeah. So Peter, it's a great topic. Maybe just a quick backdrop. When Dr. Jacobs founded the company back in '47, it was on the heels of the chemical process industry. And it was actually in New York, and then very quickly moved the company to California. And it was on the rise of, kind of the hydrocarbon supply chain, from everything from refineries all the way up to upstream oil and gas and pipelines. We saw this kind of coming, and we were doing it, and we were doing our best to try to be in sustainable ways. We actually sold the business. So we sold our energy, chemicals, and resource business in 2018, not because it was a bad business and those were bad people, but the speed by which we could affect that sector, we didn't feel that we could. And there were other companies that were probably more pure plays in addressing that. A great company called Worley Parsons ended up acquiring the entity. And there's great things that they're doing on that energy transition, in forms of clean energy as well. So we're out of that space from our pure play engineering capabilities, and more in the advisory of working with big oil as well as other fossil fuel based companies on how to transition. We're doing that more from an environmental standpoint.
Great. Good. Well, you guys are well poised for the future, I would say. Let me ask you a different question, sort of take a different direction here. And this is for the professors and students in the audience. What skills do students need in the decarbonization area to be ready for the job market over the coming decade or two? And maybe specifically as it relates to the skills that they would need to be able to get a job at Jacobs.
Yeah, well, Peter, you absolutely opened the door up for me on this one. So maybe just the disclaimer comment is that if anybody on the phone is interested in coming to Jacobs, I'm sure that Dr. Rumsey and Dr. Fisher can give you my contact information. We are hiring, and so that's always there. I point it down to two, Peters, is that one is that know that your technical skill sets and your technical background, whether it be in any form of STEM or otherwise as well, in today's world is a right of entry, quite frankly. And so that got you to the table. Now what we're looking for is those skill sets, but what are kind of the data skill sets that one might have, and how the use of data can facilitate even greater insights into the solutions that we're looking for. And then the second is around creative thought leadership, always thinking from the next dimension of where are things going. Yes, I can solve for this challenge in today, but how sustainable is that going to be 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now? And that's the dynamic that, you know, I would say from an age demographic perspective, and I don't know if it's proper for us to even speak in that demographic, but I'll go ahead and throw it out there anyways. What we're seeing from you know, young men and women that are coming out of university all the way up to kind of 10, 15 years out of university is that is a generation of folks that can think in those two criteria that I just articulated, and do it a lot better than folks like me that, you know, I'm consulting. I'm probably doing more consulting with that age demographic than I do my own peers or, you know, my superiors as well. So great opportunity and paradigms of I need to do this, then I'm eligible to do this, then I'm qualified to do that. We're pushing all that aside.
Yeah, I've been wondering in terms of digitalization and more data, because we need to scale the deployment of the methods we know very rapidly and consistently, and I think that's one of the benefits of digital tools versus sort of more analog practices. Do you have some examples of advancements where you feel like you are really leveraging data-driven methods already?
We do. We can always be doing more. So let me put that as the backdrop. But I'll maybe talk about some surprises that we gave to our shareholders in the market here recently. Our last two acquisitions that we've made, the companies look nothing like what we look like, both from a diversity standpoint, which is good. We want that. But we bought two software companies. So you think Jacobs, big engineer, known as for an engineering, you know, their engineering horsepower. We bought a company called Streetlight Data. And what Streetlight Data does, based right here in San Francisco, is capitalize on mobility analytics, all from anonymous sources, in order to determine the best transportation from a multimodal perspective, networks that can be built in metropolitan areas to optimize transport, as well as do that from the most socially and diverse perspective of people that are living in urban environments, right? And so it's the use of data in order to drive the decision, rather than, you know, more people are coming from Oakland to San Francisco, so let's put a second BART line in across the bay. It's like, whoa, wait a second, let's use analytics to figure out what the you know, means and methods could be. The second is a company called Blacklinks, which has perfected through just a tremendous amount of algorithms, mostly for intelligence and defense purposes. But there's a lot of data out there. You know, now we're measuring in terabytes and whatever the next byte is above. But what's the data that we really need at the edge in order to optimize, you know, what our solution is? So we're making these investments in development of software platforms in order to drive, you know, the human decision making skill set.
Well, there is a lot of data out there as it relates to buildings. There's lots of energy data and performance data that's starting to be collected. And I think there's a future for trying to, wade through that and get a better handle on how to optimize buildings for energy. I loved your comment about, well, I didn't actually learn that much in university. So sorry, Dr. Fisher, right? But, I actually had a
But no,
similar
that wasn't
experience.
he was a great professor, but he gave me
He's
a
a
lot of
great professor.
awareness. It was the awareness
Yes.
that was the awesome part.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
comment on that for the students in case you're wondering. We also always happy to have great graduate school applications, but the reality is, in a class you will spend 100 to 200 hours on a topic. And that includes, reading, discussion, some software tools, and on the job you will have spent 200 hours on something like before you
Blink an eye.
blink of an eye.
Yeah.
And so you will very much more rapidly, deeply go into something. And
That's right.
my son plays a lot of games, and he said, yeah, I realized one thing I learned is to get reasonably okay at something, you need to put in 5,000 hours. To get pretty good at something, you need to put in 10,000 hours. To be really, really good, you need 20,000 hours of investment. So,
There you go.
in that context, I think, we create a
So,
yeah.
I mean, but with that in light, and I think all of us who have completed college, have a similar experience, is what you're saying, Martin. But how do we want to think about teaching building decarbonization, if that's the case? That we're teaching people how to think, but they don't have enough time to get all the skills that are needed. How do we want to think about the building decarbonization topic and teaching that? What do you think, Bob?
Was that for me or for
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and it's also thinking about the time.
From your selfish perspective of
Look, I think
going to 100% revenue, right?
Yeah, I think that it is such, and I probably even didn't do it as much justice as we could have as well. But I think that we've got a tremendous amount, whether it be the universities that are represented here or even globally. There's so many great bastions of learning that we have. The why. I think that the more that we that come from STEM backgrounds can understand the why and the positive impact that it has on the world, not just for ourselves, but our children and our children's children and so forth. I think that's going to generate, the solutions that we come through. Yes. Are there a tremendous amount of policy debates on this topic and sources of funds and where things go? That's always going to be there. And we're finding ourselves, even at Jacobs and even our peer group, our competitors, in the middle of those policy debates. But our understanding of the why and really getting into the emotional side of, no, this is something that we have to do. This isn't that we think that it's a good, no, this is an imperative. We have to do this. And oh, by the way, it makes for a good business. Peter, we were talking about the Larry Fink statement, broad statement. So BlackRock is, one of the, if not the largest institutional investor on the planet, 6, 7, 8 trillion dollars worth of investment that they move markets on what they say. And, the chief investment officer and the founder puts out one memo that if your company is not engaged in these items to protecting our planet, we will not invest $1 into your company. And markets move, right? And it's those types of stands that we need to take. And then all of us, from coming from the technical fields, can then have that positive impact. And I think as you think about it from whether it be a professor or a student, how do we bring that awareness to all the great minds that we have in our learning institutions, so that they can be a part of that narrative moving forward?
Great. We did get a good question here from the audience from Eric Holdrup, who actually teaches a course here at Stanford on energy issues. Are there new technologies besides data methods you see as high priorities for building performance improvement, which might be career considerations for students?
Sure. I mean, it's tough to say that it's tough to make it binary that this is kind of data centric and this isn't, because everything right now is data centric. But I would say this, in the buildings environment, in the building sector, the other piece that I would say that is really, really important, especially as you look at the role of labor right now, are how to drive productivity enhancements in the field. That can come from, upstream within design and within engineering, but also enhancing workplace productivity is a great area of focus that the world needs, just because you look at job sites right now. In fact, I brought up the Intel example, well publicized, it's in the public domain. In order to build a $20 billion chip manufacturing facility in Arizona outside of Phoenix, the standard resource headcount would have been, we needed to get to 5,000 plus people on site by date X, which was 1/2 of what we would have done it even 5 years ago. Try getting 5,000 people on a job site today in Arizona. That's probably not happening. The world still needs semiconductors. How do you do that? And so means, methods, how do you enhance that in different ways of driving productivity? Big topic.
That's great. It's interesting that you say that. I mean, it's a perfectly logical answer, but I think a lot of us were expecting maybe you would answer like we're waiting for some big breakthrough in solar technology or something, but you're not saying that, are you?
No, I mean those are going to
Yeah.
happen. I think those are things those are sectors that could go to, but I think maybe, Peter, maybe my mind is too focused in on the right now, because we got a major challenge in front of us right now, and it's I'd say that's a big one.
Yeah, that's great. It's great news. We did get one question about microgrids. Is Jacobs involved with microgrids?
We are. We actually we have a venture capital investment right now in a company called Microgrid Labs, and so this is the electrification of our cities and how to do that in the most efficient way. And as new technologies are coming within battery storage and new new composite materials that are going in to get greater use of storage, microgrids and everything around the microgrid is a huge topic. I also sit on the board of the Eaton Corporation, which is one of the largest power cycle management companies in the world, and I'm probably going to make an adjective out of a word I'm not allowed to, but I'll go ahead and say it. The gridification of everything is probably one of the biggest drivers of companies like Schneider, ABB, Eaton, and others in the use of technology in order to have those microgrids.
Yeah.
One more perfect example. Just in the Northeast United States, big offshore wind that BP is a joint venture partner in, and so that's going. Well, that generated energy has to come onshore somehow, and once it comes onshore, mostly through port facilities, it then needs to feed grids. Right now, our grid infrastructure, specifically in the U.S., is ill-equipped to handle, on again, off again type of power. Where our grid is either it's all on or it's all off. And so how to best utilize power for the optimization of renewable sources is another big topic as well.